presidential election with a sweeping victory across battleground states.
Yes, and after the shortest ever election campaign, just over 100 days, Kamala Harris is now preparing to, well, finally, I should say, really, officially concede defeat.
Yeah, last night she left her campaign headquarters in the early hours without addressing her supporters. She's called Donald Trump to congratulate him and is now expected to speak at Howard University in Washington at around 9 p.m. UK time. We'll, of course, bring you that moment when it happens live. And Mark, I mean...
I know what you're going to say. Why?
Well, we talked about it last night, didn't we? I mean, it was bizarre because we were stuck in the middle of this count.
Yeah. The world leaders were sending in...
I mean, but that sort of came later because the key battleground states hadn't even been called. I mean, we just started to call North Carolina for Donald Trump. Georgia hadn't been called. The Rust Belts hadn't been called. And she told her supporters, turn out the lights, go home, we'll deal with this in the morning.
Yeah, well, she's now said that the reason was that she didn't have a speech ready because she was preparing to... Well, the speech she had written was about, oh, it's going to be delayed. I mean, I just don't buy it. But, you know, it's astonishing, actually.
Yeah, it really
was. It has taken so long to do this. But we will have that concession speech for you, as I say, in roughly an hour's time. And, I mean, she'll have to explain to her party why her message failed to land and why Republicans have control of the Senate. You can see it there. Control for the Republicans for the first time in 6 years. And they're leading the House too, though results are still expected from a number of races there. US correspondent James Matthews has tonight's first report on Donald Trump's historic return to the White House.
Overnight, America had flagged a change in direction. Again, the shores of Palm Beach harbour the seat of power. In Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump woke up president-elect.
Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
This was the Trump Watch Party. Here they called it the greatest political comeback of all time.
Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try, we have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that.
This stage show was choreographed from early in the evening. Soon after polls closed, results were drifting in Donald Trump's direction.
Sky News is projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina.
One by one, the swing states swung his way. These were supporters of Kamala Harris on Election Day. This was the contrast the day after. In Washington, D.C., they lined up to hear her concession speech. It was late afternoon on a business day that included business with Donald Trump. She called to congratulate him on his win. Her aide said she discussed the importance of a peaceful transfer of power. It was billed as a close contest. Ultimately, it wasn't. Donald Trump took the presidency, and Republicans made significant gains in Congress. This country's politics for the next 4 years is in the firm grip of Donald Trump and Trumpism.
Thrilled, excited, looking forward to the golden years.
It's awesome. I feel God has answered our prayers, and I think we're going to have a great next 4 years and hopefully 4 more and 4 more after that.
It is the return of their chosen one, a new dawn in American politics, same as the old one. James Matthews, Sky News, in Mar-a-Lago, Florida.
Well, Trump's victory came off the back of a campaign that put the economy and the issue of immigration front and centre, and it had maximum impact.
The Democrats' blue wall cracked and suffered most damage in Pennsylvania, which accounted for 19 electoral college votes. Well, our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn spent the day in the crucial battleground state, hearing from voters about Trump's enduring appeal.
In a Philadelphia diner, they were digesting the news with their breakfast. Their state had won it for Donald Trump. For some, this has been a one-issue election.
Economy, bottom line, economy. We got to stop giving it away.
What has it been like living under Joe Biden's economy?
Oh, Jesus. It was one of the worst. One of the worst that I have experienced in my lifetime. You know?
Many hope Donald Trump will restore their fortunes.
I sold my house and moved in with my daughter because I couldn't afford my mortgage anymore. I don't have a lot of money to do the things I want with. My money has gotten very small.
And do you think Donald Trump will help with that?
If he doesn't, I might kick him in the butt.
Then we have your other little, like the log cabins over there.
In her gift shop over the road, Rosemary Veneziali sells nostalgia and souvenirs and hopes Donald Trump can bring back the good times, because she says he understands what Americans have been going through.
He sees it. He knows it. He's seeing the people suffer. He's seeing them not be able to buy food. He's seeing all the things that we could have, we don't have.
There was euphoria amongst Trump supporters last night when Pennsylvania swung to Donald Trump. They knew their state would prove pivotal in winning back the White House in his extraordinary comeback.
It's been said that this election has been like no other, but the story we've heard from voters up and down this crucial swing state is one we've heard many times before in America. The issue that came up more than any other was the price of food and fuel. Yet again, it seems it was the economy that mattered the most.
From Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, from diners to doorsteps, the same refrain. Americans do not feel as well off now as they did under Trump.
Anybody who can't see that this country fell off a cliff over the last 4 years is an idiot. And I hate to say that because I don't want to feel that way towards my countrymen, but it's just the fact.
The same sentiment right across Pennsylvania has helped shift the state decisively to Donald Trump and drive him to victory.
And Dom joins us now from Philadelphia. And Dom, of course, we were talking to you throughout the night as we were watching this count unfold. And we got to sort of half the night and Fox News jumped the gun and gave Donald Trump Pennsylvania. And of course, that was the big shiny prize for both candidates. And we knew at that point that it was pretty much the beginning of the end for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had expected that. Many in that crowd, in that Trump watch party an hour or so to the north of Philadelphia. And as you say, Fox News was the first to announce it. It was what they were waiting for. They were euphoric because their state had switched, but also because they knew that that meant that Donald Trump was going to become president. And I think, you know, Pennsylvania is so important because it has these 12 electoral college votes, but also the way the demographics work here, they reflect the same kind of mix in so many other swing states. And what we heard, as I was saying, that report here, across the state was this sense that voters are able to sort of compartmentalise what they think about Donald Trump. They are able to put aside the fact that he's a convicted felon, the fact that he's been accused of rape by multiple women and sexual assault, the fact that he's admitted to sexually assaulted women on tape, the fact that he's been impeached and indicted. All of that, and the fact he's also been described as fascist by two of his closest advisors and his closest aides in his first administration, they're able to put all that aside because they say what really matters to them is not his record in that respect, not Trump the man, but Trump the policymaker. And what they believe, so many of them, is that he will bring back those good times that they associate with a 4 years that Trump spent in office. I think many people will say those are rose-tinted glasses. It's been referred to as Trumpnesia. They don't remember the bad times, the chaos, the shenanigans that we saw in Trump's first term in office. They remember a time of prosperity. And Joe Biden's problem is that inflation has made life so less affordable for so many Americans over the last 4 years. The economy has been getting better, but not well enough for people to feel it. And I think so those Trump voters and those who were persuaded to join them do believe in a rosier future under Donald Trump, and certainly the financial markets seem to be reflecting initial optimism in that respect. On the other side, though, you have people like two black women who we were talking to as we walked here just now. We said, how do you feel? And they said, well, how do you think we feel? We're black and we're women. We're going to try and emigrate. And their concern is that it's not just the White House that's been taken, it's the Senate, could well be the House of Representatives. The Supreme Court has effectively given Donald Trump immunity, certainly in their minds, in a recent ruling, regardless of what he does. They're very concerned that close advisors to him believe he is a fascist, and they are deeply concerned about where this could lead. We heard that conciliatory tone, didn't we, in that speech he gave, saying that America must heal. I think so many Americans who did not vote for him just do not believe that and are deeply worried and alarmed about the future of this country.
Dom, thank you so much. Well, Dom was talking about the importance of those key battleground states, and that is what we spent last night watching. Now, as you can see from this map that we were keeping a very close eye on, the northeastern states predictably turned blue quite quickly. And then, of course, we waited for the West Coast. That turned blue as well. But then you can see this red, the sea of red right across this country. And we were looking at places like North Carolina, Georgia, these key swing states. And of course, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. As you can see, Arizona, Nevada, still too close to call. But of course, it became very clear to us quite quickly last night that things were moving in Donald Trump's way. And as we said, in early hours of the morning, Kamala Harris told her supporters through a surrogate that they needed to go home and that they would address it later today. We are expecting her to speak to supporters in under 45 minutes' time. But you can just see from this map what was going on. Let's go straight to our man with the numbers, Louis Goodall, who was breaking it all down for us, looking at things county by county throughout the night. Louis, over to you.
Well, Yalda, we went into last night wondering which of the candidates, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, would be able to motivate the better coalition. We had a clear and comprehensive answer last night. It was Donald Trump. He was once again underestimated by comparison to where he should have been by the polls, at least to some extent. We spent all this time, didn't we, talking about the 7 swing states: Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. Every single one, you can see the 4 that have been declared here, taken by Donald Trump, and the other 2 are well on their way. Let's just examine what happened in each of those briefly. We can see Donald Trump retook the state of Georgia, a state that Joe Biden took in 2020 for the first time for a Democrat since 1992. He took it by 50.7%. Let's have a look up here as well in North Carolina, somewhere the Democrats had their eye on. 51% for Donald Trump, kept it in his column. Pennsylvania, a state that was described as the pivotal state for this election. Indeed it was. Donald Trump took it handily, 50.4%. He swept through all of the Rust Belt states. Michigan as well, recently just been declared, 49.8%, a margin of 83,500. Wisconsin, again, a state that he took in 2016. Joe Biden had it in 2020, took it by a margin of 28,500. And we're still waiting for Nevada, but I think it's very likely that it's called today for Donald Trump. And just actually while we're on Nevada, take a look at this. This is Clark County, which is the home of Las Vegas. This has been a solidly Democratic center for as long as anybody can remember. Kamala Harris is the home of Las Vegas, is ahead there, but you can see she's only ahead by an absolute hair's breadth, 7,500 votes. We can go back and back and back, and we can see all the way back to 2012. This is a sort of place which has historically weighed Democratic votes. It's a very Hispanic part of the state. That's a theme we're going to return to in a minute. Arizona as well. Joe Biden took it in 2020. Trump, I think, there's still quite a lot of vote outstanding. Very, very likely to take it again. How did he did it? Well, just let me give you a few examples of the sort of counties where Trump is not just winning, but transforming the electoral demography of the United States. One way that he has done this is by making huge inroads with Latino voters, a community, part of the United States that historically has been very, very strongly Democratic. Let me show you that through the prism of just one county here. Down here, let's say Starr County here, 88% is right on the southern border of Texas with Mexico. Not a huge number of people who live there, but you can see that Donald Trump has a margin there of 2,500 with 58% more or less of the vote. Let me just tell you or show you how Starr County used to vote. It voted for Biden in 2020 by 52%. It voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 by 79%. And it voted for Barack Obama in 2012 by 86%. You can see in 1, 2, 3, 4 elections, this has gone from an absolutely almost hegemonic Democratic state to one that is voting for Donald Trump. And what is distinctive about Starr County on the border? It is over 95% Hispanic. That is one of the ways that Donald Trump is reconfiguring the map. And he's not just doing it with Hispanics either, but if we take, let's say, for example, a county like, or a state, a Democratic state, like Chicago, like Cook County here, which is a very Democratic place. You can see Kamala Harris has won the state overall. A lot of African-American voters. What's happened here? Kamala Harris has still won it handily, but she's got 68.8% compared to nearly 75% of the vote for Joe Biden back in 2020. And we see this repeated in place after place. The rainbow coalition that the Democratic Party has historically relied upon is no longer reliably voting for the Democratic Party. Donald Trump is transforming it. And even in, let's just take, for example, really Democratic states like New York. Let me tell you this, New York, this was the weakest performance for a Democrat in the state of New York, for any Democrat, which is one of the most reliably Democratic states for any Democrat since the mid-1980s. Donald Trump was closer to winning New York than Kamala Harris was to winning Florida, which until quite recently was a swing state. In virtually every part of this country, it doesn't matter where you look, this was a country which was becoming more and more Republican. And let me just give you a little example of some of that. Just have a look at this data here. When we're asking about how has he done it in terms of the issues that really matter, these are the exit polls, key issues. Which one of these 5 issues mattered most in deciding how you voted for president? You can see that Kamala Harris, yeah, for sure, her voters talked about democracy. But what were the Republican voters talking about? They were talking about the economy. 51% said that that was the most important issue for them. And the unfortunate thing, as we saw for Kamala Harris, is that there were far more voters for Donald Trump than there were for Kamala Harris. Therefore, the economy matters most. And you can see, let's just have a look at here, just finally, this just shows you the scale of the swing in each different county to the Republican Party. Ignore the bit out west because we didn't have enough data for that so far. But you can see this isn't just one part of the country. It's not just one part of the Democratic coalition. It's not just one sort of set of demographies or set of populations. This is universal. In county after county after county after county, there has been a swing to the Republicans, a swing to the right. Indeed, there is not one single county in the United States, not one, where Kamala Harris did better than Joe Biden did in 2020. This wasn't just a win, it was a crushing win. It was a red wave for Donald Trump.
Indeed, let's have a look at the scene not far from here, actually, at Howard University in Washington, where Kamala Harris is due to speak 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. UK time, and that is the very place that the Democrats were hoping to stage a victory party last night, but as the results came in, well, that idea went up in smoke, frankly. And we do know, though, that Kamala Harris has called Donald Trump to concede the election, but she will be speaking, as I say, in about 40 minutes' time. Well, some have called this the podcast election. Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance successfully courted the so-called bro vote by trying to appeal to millions of younger male listeners. Just have a listen to this.
This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelt boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, a podcaster here with millions and millions of followers and subscribers. That was Dana White, the head of UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. And he was thanking Joe Rogan, whose show has 18 million, to be precise, subscribers.
In fact, that interview with Donald Trump in 24 hours, it was a 3-hour interview. He racked up 26 million listeners, more than any of the other networks combined.
Yeah, overwhelmingly male.
Yeah.
And probably young.
They were calling them the Joe Rogan listeners, you know.
Yeah.
So let's go straight to our US correspondent, James Matthews, who has been watching all of the developments at Mar-a-Lago for us. James, what an extraordinary night. I mean, we're watching it unfold. You were there in Mar-a-Lago with Team Trump.
Yeah, hi, Yalda. Quite something indeed. I mean, you heard Dana White. That was at the end of the night when victory was in the bag, and it was rock star stuff. You know, Donald Trump coming on the stage, flanked by his family, cheering crowd, cheering his every word. I might say he did rather revert to Donald Trump that we saw on the campaign trail. His speech at 3 o'clock in the morning was something like half an hour and more. Some of the same old stories, and people did start drifting away. So there has been a flatness about the Donald Trump campaign, but I think what he tapped into was the audience, and he knew where to find that audience. You mentioned, Mark, the podcast election. That was certainly the case, I think, with Joe Rogan. Millions of followers, many of them young men, and that was the demographic specifically targeted by the Trump campaign. That's where they thought that people were politically disengaged and had fallen out with politics, but and could be reeled back in. So a 3-hour interview on Joe Rogan targeting young males in the Rust Belt in particular. This is a country where, you know, manufacturing industry has been in decline, and in the likes of Michigan, Pennsylvania, jobs have gone. There is a sense among young males that they have lost prosperity, a sense of belonging, and that politics has left them behind. That, I think, was the beauty in Trump targeting them. They felt they had lost their voice, and their voice roared last night. It was a big factor in putting Trump back into power. He's in Mar-a-Lago just behind me. He's been quiet, no posting on social media so far today, clearly been dealing with phone calls from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, amongst others. But yeah, the young male vote, the black male vote as well, that was tapped into by the kind of places in the internet and across the media that he ventured into. In parts of the country, he doubled the black male vote. Latinos, that was a huge factor, big swing towards Donald Trump. I spoke to one Latino last night, politically active in this part of the United States. He said, I didn't trust Donald Trump in the old days. My priorities are family, God, and the right to make a living. He said that of the two candidates, he had come to expect Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris to deliver on his three priorities. That gives you a sense of what was in the minds of important demographics here.
James, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Well, let's get more now and reaction. Joining us is Ron Phillips, former chair of the Washington, D.C. Republican Party. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for joining us here on the programme. I guess congratulations is in order.
Big victory.
Thank you.
You know, there were a lot of polls that were done before this, and we talked about, you know, they were reassessing how they were doing it because they were spooked out by 2020 and then 2016. What do you think went wrong this time?
Well, I think the technology of polling today is because there's no longer home phones and you're talking to somebody in their home. It's mostly going to cell phones and how they're reaching people. Many people discount immediately. Think about how many times you get hit on your cell phone with an annoying call that's not on your contact list. So a lot of these polls are getting narrower and narrower, not reaching the kind of target audience you're really after by people dismissing it. One of the areas that some of my friends in the polling industry have told me, they're having a problem with white male voters who are more consistent on not answering that call. So that skews polls, and as that skews polls and sampling, when you skew a sampling, then you're skewing how you're moving forward on, you know, determining a mindset.
What do you think, what would you put the success down to? Because you mentioned white males there, and there's no secret at all that the kind of forgotten white male working class is what, you know, Trump targets, and, you know, he appeals to them. But it seems as though that's broadened. If you look at the Latino vote, if you look at, I mean, even the black vote in a much smaller way, it seems that that sort of demographic is broadening, and the Republican Party is becoming a different party.
Well, I think what you're seeing now in this election specifically, there's no one formula. There's no, like, white male, you know, non-college educated person that's following Donald Trump. Donald Trump is appealing to a working class now, which goes across all spectrums, and it also goes, you know, it's not so much of male versus female anymore as well, because there's a lot of working female voters who are appealed to his economic message.
I guess it's also not the Republican Party that they're voting for, as you know it. They're voting for Donald Trump.
They're voting for Donald Trump, but remember, just like you have in Great Britain with a change in the Conservative Party, we're seeing a change in the Republican Party. And as our party changes to reach voters and reach the new spectrum of people that we're representing, that's how you're seeing that come out in these elections now, where we're reeling out to middle class, African American, Hispanic groups all the way across that normally we never had a chance to appeal to.
But some people are worried about Trump 2.0. How much of this do you think he will do? The mass deportations of 11 million undocumented immigrants, defunding the FBI, the Justice Department, and embarking on a campaign of retribution against those he insists have wronged him. How many of those things do you think he will do?
Well, I think you can certainly count on the fact that we are going to go through the people who've illegally entered this country and have committed laws against our citizens. We're not going to keep them here. We're going to send them back. We're going to get them out of the country. I don't think you know, a lot of this becomes hyperbole, where they're talking about, well, mass deportations. Well, no one's lining up airplanes and taking everybody immediately out and home. But people have entered this country illegally. And there's going to have to be folks that are going to have to be reprocessed. These people were never screened. We had an open border. And now we have a crime rate that's ridiculous because of that open border policy. I mean, from the standpoint of the United States, we had people not coming in just out, you know, it was always about Central America and the poor Hispanics. There were Chinese, there were Africans, there were people from all over the world coming through that border, and at the same time funding a drug cartel that was controlling the border on the other side.
Ron Phillips, thank you so much for coming here and joining us on the program.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the gender gap was always going to be a crucial factor in the contest. We've just spoken to Ron about that, and both candidates played on that. Donald Trump was determined to motivate men to turn out to vote, and Kamala Harris campaigned heavily on issues like reproductive rights. But that approach didn't have the same impact. Cordelia Lynch reports now on how the women's vote failed to deliver for Kamala Harris.
In Georgia, jubilation. It was the economy and immigration, not abortion, that defined this election.
So, but how are you doing today?
I just feel like I'm in a fever dream. Like this, I feel exactly how I did in 2016.
In Atlanta, Democrats are crestfallen.
Are you surprised she didn't do better with female voters?
The disparity for the results is shocking, for sure. I think that's the most shocking part of it. Just how much more we needed to have gotten her elected.
Kamala Harris took a risk putting reproductive rights at the top of her agenda. It didn't deliver. Yes, there were some wins, restrictive abortion bans undone in 7 states, but activists feel abandoned.
I feel let down, honestly, by first and foremost, white women voters in this country. White women in this particular election in 2024, at least in the presidential realm, voted at almost the exact same rate that they voted for the same person who is a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, and the very person who is proudly telling you that he snatched away your reproductive rights.
In so many rural and suburban areas, though, it was other anxieties that dominated.
Why couldn't Democrats win over women like you?
I don't think she ever talked about anything that were the points that meant the most to me. The economy, the immigration, the crime that came with the immigration.
Are you ready for a female president?
A woman who served at a high rank in the military might very well make a good president. But a woman who's been a prosecutor in a very left state, I don't think so.
The gender gap did play out in the election results. Women did favor Kamala Harris, but not nearly enough to cement her victory. She needed an earthquake. She got a rumble, one arguably eclipsed by the noisy sound of young men.
Tradition still runs deep in America. A woman of colour will not taste life at the helm this time. A crossroads, once again, passed over. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Georgia.
Let's look a little closer at abortion and how that featured in the election. Measures aimed at either protecting existing abortion rights or expanding them were put on the ballot in 10 different states across the US. They are in response to the Supreme Court's decision in 2022 to overturn Roe v. Wade, which led many states to enact abortion restrictions or bans. Voters in these states, Arizona, Nevada, Maryland, New York, Missouri, Montana and Colorado, all voted in favour of improving access to abortions, and voters in Florida, Nebraska and South Dakota rejected measures that would have created a constitutional right to abortion. Anna Botting has been hearing from young women in Philadelphia who were below voting age.
We are the ones affected by this, and we're only a year out from voting in the most important election. As women, we are the ones getting affected. Our rights, our college next year, we are the ones who will be mainly affected by this.
We've just called Michigan as well. The 3 blue wall states have gone for Donald Trump. How does it make you feel that your state has voted for Donald Trump?
Powerless. There's no way. If our younger generation who has the most say in this vote, it would not be red. These people who are retired, they don't matter. They're the ones who mainly voted for him. We need younger voices to speak out.
If a felon can vote, why can't we? If a felon can vote, why can't we? What about you?
Women's rights are human rights. Yes. We should not be at risk for our lives. My friends who are trans, who are gay, should not have to risk for their lives every single day. We shouldn't be afraid to go to school. Guns should be banned in this country. We prioritize abortion over guns.
Just some news on the Senate race, which is also going the Republicans' way, but some good news for the Democrats. The Democratic US Representative Elissa Slotkin has won Michigan open Senate seat. It's a bittersweet victory in a swing state that's also backed Republican President-elect Donald Trump. Michigan was declared a little earlier today, and a win for the Democrats in the Senate race today.
Let's go back to those live pictures from Washington, D.C. and Howard University. This is Kamala Harris's alma mater and the venue of her would-be victory party. And, of course, the mood changed completely here last night. We saw originally people celebrating, and then suddenly a member of her team came out and told the crowd to leave, and very quickly we saw lights out, people packing up and getting out of there. But we are expecting Kamala Harris to give her concession speech here in about 25 minutes' time. We understand she's called Donald Trump. She has conceded, but long after she did that, Donald Trump had already declared victory.
Yes, he had certainly done that. And during the campaign, Donald Trump projected himself as a man of peace, with a promise to end wars abroad, perhaps sensing that a peace deal could be on the horizon, albeit a rushed one. Ukraine's president Volodymyr Zelensky was among the first world leaders to congratulate President-elect Trump. There's also the question of what a second Trump presidency would mean for the conflict in the Middle East. Our Security and Defence Editor Deborah Haynes has been looking at the possible global impact of Trump's victory.
Warm words from the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory.
Then came the cold reality check from his new opponent about the difficulties of dealing with Donald Trump.
The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order.
The Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance.
Regardless of what's said in public, officials here and in most NATO capitals across Europe are bracing themselves for another 4 years of Donald Trump rather than celebrating his return. Many expect there to be renewed tensions with Washington and much greater unpredictability when it comes to tackling global threats. First among them is Russia's war in Ukraine. The president-elect has vowed to end the conflict, but without explaining how. With Vladimir Putin looming large, Ukraine's leader needs Donald Trump on his side, saying on social media, "I appreciate President Trump's commitment to the peace through strength approach in global affairs. This is exactly the principle that can practically bring just peace in Ukraine closer." Then there is the world's other escalating crisis between Israel and Iran. The Israeli Prime Minister among the first to call Trump to congratulate him and talk about the Iranian threat. He'll surely be hoping for ever greater US support, maybe even a green light for Israel to bomb Iranian nuclear sites. One thing's clear, America's allies and its enemies are about to encounter a very different White House. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, back in January, on the very first day of my programme, The World, I spoke to David Lammy about how he would possibly work with Donald Trump. Just have a listen to that exchange back then.
Let's just pull up the quote, what you said. You said Trump is not only a woman-hating neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he's also a profound threat to the international order that has been the foundation of Western progress for so long. Do you still think that?
Well, look, I do worry that Donald Trump was not keen on NATO, because I think it's a fundamental plank of European and global security. I do worry that Donald Trump and some members of the Republican Party have taken a view that the financing and standing by the people of Ukraine, standing by Zelensky, is something that America can turn its back on. That worries me greatly. And so part of the job of being Foreign Secretary, if I have the privilege to do that here in the UK, is also to try and persuade and use your influence. And so it would be my sincere hope that Donald Trump recognises that this is a very challenging geopolitical moment.
David, that was David Lammy speaking to me earlier this year. Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh, who joins us now live from Westminster. And Serena, you know, I put that quote to him, and there was some discussion here yesterday on the set as we were watching results unfold, because, of course, David Lammy quickly put out a tweet congratulating Donald Trump. So it will be interesting to see how special that special relationship remains.
Completely. I mean, those comments you put to him, very strident. He didn't seem to be distancing himself from them when you asked him, but he did lean into some of the concerns that he said he would be bringing up with Donald Trump, such as NATO. I mean, there are big questions around defence spending, what happens to Ukraine, tariffs that Donald Trump has been repeatedly saying throughout the campaign. Now, Lammy says that he will work with the president once he comes into the White House. But I guess the risk is that Donald Trump has a very long memory. We saw a bit of Keir Starmer's strategy, though, today. He congratulated Donald Trump almost immediately as he started Prime Minister's questions. He wants to get ahead of this, he wants to be quick, and he wants to keep the Trump team close. I understand now that Keir Starmer has called Donald Trump to congratulate him, and Downing Street will give us more details in the meantime. But let's remember, Number 10 have been planning this for a long time, strategizing for a possible Trump victory. Now that it's happened, they will be putting those plans into place. They're not natural political bedfellows, but Rachel Reeves gave us a bit of a glimpse today in front of the Treasury Select Committee of how they might deal with disagreements. She says the UK is not a passive actor in this, and the government will constantly be making the case for the UK.
Serena, thank you so much.
So how much of Donald Trump's victory was down to his appeal, and what role did the dissatisfaction, many voters felt with the current Biden administration play?
Well, the war in Gaza led many Arab Americans to turn their backs on the Democrats, and that shifting of allegiances was mirrored by other ethnic minorities. Let's go back to Lewis now so he can do a bit of a breakdown for us.
Yes, Yalda, Donald Trump has put together by far the most diverse coalition for the Republican Party since the 1980s. 1 in 3 ethnic minority American voters voted for Donald Trump yesterday, something that many people would have found incredible just a few days ago. Let me give you a demonstration of how he did it. Hispanic voters, Latino voters, perhaps some of the most striking of all of this. Let's just go through, shall we, exactly what the lead was by party, by Hispanic voters for all of the elections going back to 2008. We see huge leads for the Democratic Party with Barack Obama for Hispanics, 36% in 2008. Barack Obama actually builds on that in 2012 to 44%. In that year. 2016, Hillary Clinton loses, obviously, to Donald Trump, but still has 38% lead. 2020, Joe Biden enjoys a 33% lead. So it's been going down a bit. But look at this. Look at this. The Democrats now only have a lead of 8% among Hispanic voters, a demographic group that historically they have banked on to be a core part of their coalition. We can also say the same thing with African-American voters as well. African-American voters, which are the backbone of the Democratic Party. 2008, a 91% lead among African-Americans for Barack Obama. 2012, 87%, 81% in 2016, 75% in 2020, and a modest reduction in 2024 to 74%, driven in particular by a reduction in African-American men voting for the party. Again, it's not much, but it all adds up. And let me just demonstrate via the map exactly how that can have an effect. So let's take African-American voters for a start. Let's look at somewhere like Michigan. You can see here Michigan, a state which has only just been called Michigan statewide, 99% of the vote for Donald Trump. Detroit is a place where historically the African-American vote has been weighed for the Democratic Party. You can see here Kamala Harris is still carrying Wayne County, which is the home of Detroit, 62.7%. But have a look at this. Joe Biden, 68.4%. In 2020, Hillary Clinton 66.8% in 2016, and Barack Obama 73% in 2012. You can see a long-scale secular decline in the African-American vote, which has come home to haunt the Democrats this time. Likewise, if we go down to the other end of the country, on the Hispanic vote side, in Florida, and look at Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County, on the southern tip of Florida, is somewhere where, again, the Democrats used to weigh Hispanic votes for the first time since the mid-1980s, since 1984, and the Ronald Reagan landslide of that year. This county has flipped Republican. You can see here in 2020, Joe Biden carried the county by 53%. In 2016, Hillary Clinton carried the county by 63% and Obama by 61% in 2012. So you can see that the rainbow coalition of voters that the Democratic Party has enjoyed historically and has relied upon is starting to fray. That is why this is an election result which in so many ways is so much worse for the Democrats than it was in 2016 when Donald Trump won the first time around. The first time around, Donald Trump could say that, or the Democrats could say about Donald Trump, that he enjoyed a coalition of older white voters in rural counties and the future electorate of the United States, the diverse, the young, and so on, were on the Democrat side. They thought that the future map was for them. We are seeing now that, in fact, the map as it looks today is more diverse, and it is for Donald Trump.
Lewis, thank you very much. So after all that, where do the Democrats go from here? We're joined now by the human rights activist Martin Luther King III and president of the Drum Major Institute, Arndrea Waters King, that institute dedicated to the vision of your father, Martin Luther King III's father. And, I mean, your father had a vision. The Democrats didn't seem to have one at this election. Was that a big problem?
So I disagree with what you just said. I don't think that it was the vision. I think it was a combination of issues, one of them being the cost of inflation, things going up. People often vote on their economics, and I think the vice president shared a vision for things changing, and the economy is in transition. In fact, I would suggest that the first 5 or 6 months of President-elect Trump's administration, once he becomes president, he's going to have some benefits for that. But I also think that the division in this nation, we've got to find a way to work together. My dad and mom often talked about disagreeing without being disagreeable. That climate has to be created. I heard President-elect Trump, sounds funny saying it because he's been president, so he stirs
45 and 47.
Yes. But I heard him say, I want to bring America together.
Yeah, he did.
My position is going to be to challenge him. Mr. President, you said you wanted to bring us together.
Yeah.
Are you going to personally challenge him on that? And do you believe that he can be a president for all Americans?
Well, I think that's going to be up to him. We are going to do what we always do, which is continue to stand for the eradication of the triple evils that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about of racism and bigotry, poverty and violence. We know and believe it's through all of us embracing peace, justice and equity. That message does not change no matter who is in office or no matter whom we're talking to. So certainly we feel that it is our mission and our purpose to do so when we are in conversations.
What did you make of, they clearly, Kamala Harris campaign felt or worried that they had a problem, certainly early on in the campaign, with young black male voters. And Barack Obama went to that meeting and he said it's unacceptable if you don't vote for Kamala Harris. I just wonder what you make of that and how worried you are that Donald Trump may be tapping into that kind of disillusionment with politics that a lot of young people feel.
So I think, first of all, that, you know, if anyone would say that black men, I mean, the numbers will hold out, overwhelming majority voted for Vice President Harris. Did some numbers get lost? Perhaps. But again, it's probably men in general. It says something about the nation that it is not prepared or has demonstrated so far. 2 women have run for president of the United States, and the United States thus far appears to have rejected that.
But it is a more diverse, range of people when you look at who is voting for him today versus 2016. We are seeing those shifts and changes in this country.
We are. I think that we are less than 24 hours from this election, and so there certainly will be plenty of time for us all to look and to look at everything that happened, to see what needs to change or not change. Certainly there is a vast coalition that came together for him, but I will also say that there is a vast coalition that also came together for Kamala Harris, and particularly when you consider the fact that she only had 100 days of a campaign versus, over 365. So you need time to build that coalition. I think that she did an admirable job with 1/3 of the time to build that. We don't know what would have shaken out if she would have had more time in order to do so.
Mr. King, do you understand the appeal of Donald Trump?
Do I understand the appeal? Of course. He's a tremendous marketer, probably one of the greatest marketers on the planet, not just in our nation, but really in the world. And he understands how to market. Now, where I have concerns is how you choose to do that, because there's no one else who could have said some of the things that he said and probably be elected president. So there's some kind of a different kind of appeal that he has that no one else that I've been able to see has.
We're from Georgia. And Rosalind Carter said something about President Reagan in the late 70s, and that they asked, did she think that Reagan was a racist? She said, you know, I don't know that. I don't know what's in his heart, but he makes people too comfortable with racism and their bias. That's what we did see in this election, that comfortableness and playing footsie with hate and division. And so, yes, there certainly is an appeal, you know, but there also is an appeal, I think, for people standing up for peace and justice and equity. And we do hope that we're going to take President-elect Trump at his word and see if he is going to be a president for us all and take steps to heal our nation.
We talked a little bit earlier about the polarization in this country and the need to heal it. Do you think that is possible at this point in time? You can see the divisions and what people feel.
We have a program that we've been working on for 2 years called Realize the Dream. The idea is to have 100 million hours of service by the 100th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., which is all of us coming together, standing together, unifying and uplifting. This is something that we worked on because we were concerned about the division over a year ago. It's only gotten larger. So we do think that there is that need out there, and that's what we are doing and as an effort for us to heal.
Just finally, how is he going to regain the confidence of women voters? Because there was this gender gap. We've just had our reporter in Pennsylvania spoke to 2 women, and they said, he said, what did you think of the election? And they said, well, we're black, we're women, we're going to emigrate. That's what they said. So Donald Trump's got some work to do.
You know, we have a 16-year-old daughter. The hardest call that I had to make today was to her in Atlanta, Georgia, after the election. And I've heard from so many mothers of little girls that today their girls are in tears. So yes, there certainly is work to do. And I would tell anyone the same thing that we told our daughter, is that our work continues, that we have to continue to stand for that what is right and good and just, the same thing that her grandparents did, even when it looked impossible.
Well, we're really grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you for coming here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's show you some live images now coming in of Kamala Harris's motorcade. As we said, she is getting ready to give a concession speech at Howard University here in Washington. And of course, the mood suddenly changed last night because her supporters were there. Every time we'd see one of the states turning blue, they would suddenly cheer. But that mood changed and dampened when one of Kamala Harris's surrogates came out and told her supporters that she wouldn't be addressing the crowd, that they needed to go home. We can just see former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who is currently at Howard University waiting for Kamala Harris,
Played a key part in all this when Joe Biden was asked to step down.
Told eventually.
To step down. And Nancy Pelosi, by the way, kept her seat and in the congressional district of California. And there she is at Howard University, which is...
you know, and I guess as we were just hearing there, we're less than 24 hours since this election, and no doubt there's a lot of Democrats today talking about how painful this is for them, but at the same time, a lot of soul-searching as well.
Omarosa Manigault Newman has joined us. Welcome. I hope you've had some sleep. Thank you for being with us all night.
Yes, we were together.
Yes. And I just wonder what you think Kamala Harris is going to say. What type of speech will it be?
I believe that her speech will be an extension of her message throughout the campaign. Her campaign was a very short campaign, but throughout that campaign, she talked about looking forward and not looking in the past, of finding new ways to connect across both the aisles, but ideology. And I hope that that message that she has shared throughout her campaign is one that will resonate with young women, for instance. Of course, there was a huge turnout of African-American women right there at my alma mater at Howard University who are hoping to hear a message from her. They didn't get it last night, and they will get that same message from her now. I'm sorry, there was something.
Are you surprised she didn't concede with a speech, a short speech, something last night?
So, and I shared this last night, I was a little surprised that she didn't come out and at least thank her supporters for all of the hard work, all the effort that they exerted on her behalf, but particularly with Howard University as the backdrop for that historic moment. There were so many young people in the audience, so many students who, this was their first campaign. She was their first major party candidate, and the disappointment that they must have felt in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Our Mark Stone is here with us as well. Welcome back.
We've got the band back together.
We're all together. Exactly.
How much sleep did you get?
Not much. Not much.
Discordant in the early hours of the morning, but it was
after that 12-hour stint. But we were watching. I mean, at around, I think it was about 11 o'clock last night when one of Kamala Harris's representatives came out and said, turn the lights out, we're packing up for now, we'll come and address this in the morning. I mean, some of the key swing states hadn't even been called at that stage.
It was a really weird decision, I think, and I wonder if they will come to regret it, although they've probably got much bigger regrets to be thinking about than that. Why did they do it? Maybe it was because they thought that Pennsylvania was going to take a lot longer to come back. They knew it wasn't going their way, but they didn't think that things were going to move quite as extraordinarily fast as they did. But yeah, it's taken her a long time, and it was weird. We were discussing it last night that the foreign leaders were busy congratulating Donald Trump, even as Kamala Harris had literally gone to bed, so it seemed. But now she is making that journey from Observatory Circle up in the higher part of Washington, D.C. To Howard University, where she will deliver those remarks shortly. And I'm fascinated to see what tone she will strike, whether she's magnanimous, how she frames, whether she reflects on any failures of the Democratic Party, of her campaign, and what she says about Donald Trump. I mean, remember, he didn't mention her last night. I mean, she hadn't conceded, so maybe that was why, but he didn't mention her at all. But I thought his speech was magnanimous. He talked about bringing the country back together again. Goodness me, he's got a lot of work to do there, as you were just discussing with your previous guests. And I've spoken to a number of people today who've talked in frank terms about what they're going to do now, that half this country, a little less than half, because of the way democracy works, are more than anxious. They are frightened. I was just talking to a politician outside on the street here who said, who's a Republican, who's ecstatic today, and he said that they've got no need to be frightened. Donald Trump didn't destroy the country in his first term. He's now more organised. He won't destroy it in his second. And what I was talking to a British diplomat earlier who said something similar, said, look, Donald Trump, when you meet him behind the scenes, is not the bombastic guy that we all see. He is different. Maybe, but plenty of people who worked within his... I mean, I can see Omarosa rolling her eyes.
I was just going to say, let's bring in Omarosa, because, of course, she worked directly with him.
You worked under him, and plenty of people who also were in that Oval Office left and called him everything, including a fascist.
Well, I worked with him at 3 different stages of my life. I met him in my early 20s on The Apprentice, which was a series where he was the businessman mentoring young, up-and-coming businessmen and women. And he was different then. Then he was a performer, and he's the person who captured the heart of all of those viewers who tuned in every single week. And then he called to invite me to be a part of his campaign and administration.
Yeah, we're just about 10 seconds away to the top of the hour. As we said, we're waiting for Kamala Harris to give her concession speech. Stay with us.
Oh, yeah, we're wrapping.
Tonight, he was written off, sued, put on trial, branded a fascist, but Donald Trump has pulled off one of the biggest comebacks in US politics.
Yes, he rode a wave of support among black and Latino voters to retake the White House. He will become the 47th president of the United States.
He declared himself the winner nearly 12 hours ago. Now we wait to hear from Kamala Harris. She's due to address crowds in Washington any moment now.
Yes, this was the Vice President's motorcade leaving for the speech a few minutes ago, and we just saw Nancy Pelosi, senior Democrat, waiting for Kamala Harris to arrive and to make her speech.
Yeah, good evening from Washington. And we were just saying we've got the gang from last night back here on set. Yeah. And what a election day, democracy day, you know, people have been calling it that. It was 12 hours of just, you know, we thought this might take days, actually. And I think mentally we'd prepared ourselves for that. And actually, it happened quite quickly in the end.
Yeah, it became pretty apparent with those early voting numbers that things weren't going well for Kamala Harris, particularly in urban areas and with the African-American vote. At that point, things went from being jubilant at Howard University to being a bit dire.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we can show our viewers some of the live shots of Howard University. Mark, we saw Nancy Pelosi in the crowd there waiting for Kamala Harris, speaking to some of her supporters. In some ways, some people would say that she was the architect of what we've seen happen over the course of the last few months. I mean, Kamala Harris, no, she isn't out yet. We're just waiting for Kamala Harris to arrive any minute now to give her concession speech. So as soon as that happens, we will
once he puts
bring
the
that to you.
seal on, then we'll know that she's about to speak. This gentleman is a member of the White House Communication Association. So once Waka comes out, then the vice president is 5 minutes from speaking.
Okay, so
this is inside. this is what you've taken away from the White House. You know who they are, what they do.
Yes, and how long before they start speaking.
Well, they're all members of the military who are part of the White House Communication Association, and the seal can only be on that podium for a short time.
I think I can see her coming.
You can see her?
Yeah,
Good,
I thought I could. Look,
no,
listen.
a few minutes away.
Waka will have to clear before she comes on. She'll never be on stage with Waka at the same time.
I'm 66 years old. I'm half blind. So
the seal is there.
I've obviously got
seal
that
is
wrong.
there.
Can I talk a little bit about Founders Hall and how important this place is to me, and as well to Vice President Kamala Harris's journey at Howard University? This was built in 1936. It holds the largest amount of African-American artifacts and history for a research institution, but it is the center of our campus and the center of my alma mater and places that I spent hours and hours of studying, and I know that she spent a lot of time there.
And in fact, this was supposed to be a victory party venue, and instead she's giving a concession speech less than 12 hours after we discovered what the results were. I mean, Fox News early into the morning declared that Donald Trump was the US president. Let's just have a little listen in to some of Kamala Harris's supporters. They were sent home last night. They've returned again this afternoon. Oh, no, they've stopped cheering. It's live TV. But Mark, we're talking there about Nancy Pelosi. You know, Kamala Harris was up against a man who 3 times on this ballot. He's been part of American political life for 9 years now, and this was his 3rd go. He described himself as the 45th and 47th president of the United States. But I'm sure, no doubt, a lot of questions being asked about how this whole thing evolved. You know, we saw in the summer Joe Biden stepping aside, being forced out effectively by the likes of Nancy Pelosi, and Kamala Harris stepping in.
Yeah, and there'll be plenty of introspection now about the choreography of all that, and that they leave it far too late. Should Biden have stuck to what I think many people thought he was going to be when he first took office, which was a one-term president, a transitional president to a younger person, but he didn't do that. He stuck on because he always claimed he was the one person who beat Donald Trump, and he thought he could do it again. And I'm really fascinated to hear what Joe Biden thinks of all of this. He'll probably claim that he should have hung on and that he could have beaten him. But there will be lots of questions about Biden's refusal to acknowledge what was the reality, that he was elderly and would never have been able to fight this race, stepped aside much earlier.
We just got a quick word with Martha Kellner, who is there at Howard University. And, well, Martha, it's not the party they were hoping for.
it's certainly not. This was dressed up for a celebration to anoint America's first female president. Well, the mood is more like a wake today. I'm expecting Kamala Harris on that stage very shortly. We've just been told, my cameraman, to switch off our lights here in anticipation of her arrival. The problem is with the reflection of the lights on the bulletproof glass behind me, and security is very tight here. There are a Secret Service all around the perimeter of Howard University checking bags and equipment as people make their way in here. There's a crowd probably of around 4,000 to 5,000 people here, far smaller than the crowd that came here last night in the hope that they would hear Kamala Harris speak. In the end, she didn't show up to her own party, and I'm told that she spent the morning and afternoon today working on this concession speech, which will be an address not just to her supporters here and to her campaign staff, but to the American nation. And the reason she's been working on that speech this morning and this afternoon is that they weren't expecting her to be having to give a concession speech today. They said they had a speech planned on the understanding that results would still be coming through at this stage, that they would still be waiting, for instance, for Pennsylvania to be called. Well, as you were saying earlier, this just happened so incredibly quickly last night, didn't it? I was here, and it was somewhere between Georgia and North Carolina being declared for Donald Trump, and a complete hush descended over here. It was so quiet, even though there was 10,000 people. I could hear a drone hovering overhead. There are some seriously despondent people here today, and I've been speaking to a couple of them. I was speaking to a couple of women who are part of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is the sorority that Kamala Harris was part of when she was a student here. And they were saying they're devastated. They spent most of the night crying. They're worried about what the future of this country holds. They're particularly worried about the future of reproductive rights. And they say they're concerned that a second Trump term could be more extreme than the previous one. They say they're worried about the fact that the Senate has gone his way, the House of Representatives may too, and that the Supreme Court is more conservative leaning. You can see there in the shades the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the crowd there speaking to other members of the Democratic Party. I actually just saw her being driven in on a golf cart. Also, the mayor of Washington, D.C. is in the crowd as well. And I also saw just a few minutes ago in the crowd some old friends of Kamala Harris, a woman named Carol Porter, who I've spoken to quite a lot throughout the past few weeks. She's a childhood friend of Kamala Harris. She was part of the school class that was bused into school as part of a desegregation experiment in the San Francisco Bay Area, part of this remarkable story that Kamala Harris has, which everyone here hoped would end with her becoming America's first female president. That hasn't happened, clearly, and I think what we see happening in Washington, D.C. in Democratic Party circles today is an inquest, a lot of soul-searching questions being asked. Is there something that this campaign, that Kamala Harris herself could have done differently to bring about a different outcome to this race? But I think not many people expected this to be such a comprehensive defeat, did they? No one expected this to happen so quickly. Certainly no one expected Kamala Harris to not even make up ground or not even beat President Biden in a single county across this entire country. That is quite staggering, given the huge amount of money and resource that particularly went into the ground operation that the Democratic Party have been executing over the past few months. And I think that's why you see people so stunned and disappointed here today.
Well, Martha, we're waiting, as you say, for Kamala Harris to arrive and give that concession speech. Omarosa tells us in the next few minutes. But let's bring Mark Stone back in as well. And Mark, you've got a bit of an update because Mike Pence has now put out a statement.
Yes, a statement from former Vice President Mike Pence, who, of course, royally fell out with Donald Trump when at the inauguration or the ratification of the last of the 2020 election. Trump was saying he won Pence did not agree. He has released a statement. I'll read a bit of it to you. He says, "The American people have spoken, and Karen, his wife, and I send our sincere congratulations to President-elect Donald Trump and his family on his election as 47th President of the United States. We send our congratulations to Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and his family on their election too. We extend our congratulations as well to the newly elected members of the Republican majorities in the House, Senate and the House of Representatives, and look forward to their efforts to renew American security, prosperity and respect for life." And he concludes by saying, "We will continue to pray for all those in authority and urge every American to join us in praying for the incoming president, vice president and elected officials at every level. God bless America." And of course, those elected officials who will be in the Trump 2.0 White House, I expect that the transition team, the transition process will take place quite quickly now.
Can we talk about that statement from Pence? I mean, this is a person that Donald Trump directed the crowd to actually hang him, put his life at risk, asked him to do illegal activities in order to keep him in office. And the guy is now sending out congratulations to the man that basically wanted him dead. This is a striking and shocking turn of events from former Vice President Mike Pence.
You thought he might remain silent?
For his own dignity, I might think that that would be the best course. It's a little surprising to me, the level of vitriol that Donald Trump directed at Mike Pence, that he would then take more of a conciliatory tone.
It's interesting what Martha was saying about the speed with which last night it deteriorated for the Democrats, in the sense that, you know, we had seven swing states, too close to call, on a knife edge, and yet very quickly, one after the other. I mean, they may well, they could all end up in
Donald Trump's
camp, couldn't
they? I think it was Mark that said last night that either it was going to be, you know, a very long time, but you also kind of said that they could all go for one or the other, mostly for Donald Trump.
And you know, we spent a lot of time, I spent many days wondering which demographic Trump would eat into, which of these groups of people that the Democrats have taken for granted and also assumed that they're sort of monolithic, and clearly they are not. But not only is it just one, it's all of them. It's not the, you know, there are no micro explanations for why this happened. It is a clean sweep. It is all demographics. You look at states like New York, where Trump has made extraordinary gains. So it's not just about the Arab Americans. It's not just about the black vote. It's the big issues. It is the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the porous border, inflation, this idea that there is chaos in America. And I've heard it again and again and again. Pennies dropping for me over the course of many months, where you've heard people saying, you know, my groceries are too expensive. I feel like the world is on edge at the moment. It wasn't at the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency.
Can I speak a little bit? You mentioned transition, and I just want to let the viewers understand that there are transition offices that become available to the winner quite quickly, and they're not far from the White House. They're about 3 blocks from the White House, and that you have an opportunity to put about 400 members of staff right into those offices, working very quickly to make the transition smooth between the two administrations. And so that would be what Donald Trump will have to be doing today.
It's quite extraordinary.
Did that happen in 2016? Wasn't that,
well, remember what happened with transition in 2016?
Some sort of row about all this.
There was a bit of a row because Donald was not prepared. We didn't have anything in place. In fact, I was one of the first 5 to walk into the transition offices, and we're like, wow, we didn't think we would be here.
It is a bizarre thing. I mean, we talk about this transition period, which is roughly sort of 76 days or something. And yet we're talking about one administration that suddenly becomes lame duck and impotent, and then another administration that's sort of not in power but coming in. I think it's kind of a very strange period.
But it's an important period because there's so much to consider from a logistical standpoint that it cannot be a very sharp stop and a very sharp stop. There has to be this rolling transition, but you'll remember how rough our transition was between the Trump and Obama administration.
Well, it's the certification of the vote, isn't it? It's and who has to do that this time? Who finally
And her speech is going to be...
Who finally certifies it this time? It's Kamala Harris.
It's going to be Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Well, it's starting.
Also, it has been confirmed that she will attend the Trump's
Second
inauguration.
time I've got it wrong. I mean, I'm just going to...
That was a staffer placing her speech there.
I'm not...
It's all right. It's okay. Well, you know what? Just...
There was a seal on the folder.
I'm going to be quiet.
There was a seal on that folder, which means the staffer was putting her
speech on the podium.
So you tell us.
Well, let me just tell you first of all that it has been confirmed that Kamala Harris will attend Donald Trump's inauguration. Remember, he did not attend Joe Biden's. He flew back to Mar-a-Lago, and therein is another extraordinary story because he flew to exile in Mar-a-Lago. He was broken. He was beaten after January the 6th.
But he said he shouldn't have left. Remember, he said this week. He said maybe I should have never left the White House, which was kind of,
we're talking about. We have throughout the night as well talked about Donald Trump and what his, cabinet would look like and what the makeup of it would be. I do think it's important to talk about, not just the Democratic Party going through a soul-searching process, but the polls. The media in this country, it just feels like there are pockets of, we talk about the polarization, but there's kind of echo chambers, whether it's on the conservative echo chamber or the liberal echo chamber. You flick through the various networks and you read and consume the media. It does feel like circa 1860. Everything is so tribal and divisive.
It's not just echo chambers, it's silos. I mean, people are just not talking to each other. The New York Times headline in January 2021 was the terrible experiment is over. President Donald J. Trump. The end. I mean, how wrong were they?
Yeah, they were wrong because just in, 76 days, there will be the inauguration. And here's the shocking thing. We just had Martin Luther King III here. It will be on his father's birthday that Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president. They were speaking about the history of Kamala Harris becoming the first African-American woman or black woman to become president and how remarkable that would be that she would be sworn in on King holiday, but that just will not come to pass.
I guess a lot of questions also being asked, is America, was it about Kamala Harris? Was it about her gender? Was it just that she just didn't resonate and Donald Trump is a much more charismatic and powerful politician and someone who, has a huge presence in this country now?
Well, I think Donald did every single thing wrong for a traditional politician. But we all know that Donald Trump is not a traditional politician. I mean, he insulted a large voting bloc. He insulted, or someone at his rally insulted the Puerto Rican community. And it didn't even impact him. He made, very sexist remarks about women and this and that. None of that had any kind of...
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, but in the echo chambers that Yalda, you were just talking about, it did have an impact. There was outrage. I remember our colleague James Matthews was interviewed some Puerto Ricans the day after that Madison Square Garden rally in New York. They weren't bothered. And yet the echo chamber suggested, of course, I'm sure many were insulted by that, but clearly not enough to sway anything. Donald Trump, Teflon Don, got away with it.
What happened to, they go low, we go high? That was Michelle Obama in, the previous Trump administration, wasn't it? Well, and this time they went low, and then the Kamala Harris campaign switched to this whole fascist, unhinged, unstable thing.
It became more about...
They went low, and then the Democrats went lower. There was no we go high. But I have to say that I was a little surprised at some of the approach that they took, I think, going toe-to-toe with him, because you cannot slime Donald Trump. Like, he will go as low in the gutter as he needs to go. But this is really hard. I have to concede to you all that this is hard watching this, just as a black woman, but as a graduate in HBCU. I want it so bad for her to have this moment, and it just isn't coming to pass.
Will she get another chance, do you think?
Yes, listen, after surviving the Trump years and the Trump administration and everybody telling us that he would never be president, and then hearing everyone say for the last 4 years he would never be president yet again, never say never in American politics. That's the lesson I think that we all learned.
She would have learned a lot from this campaign.
Certainly.
A short campaign, but my word. I mean, what an extraordinary campaign.
Impactful campaign, consequential, even though it wasn't victorious.
But as they work out what went wrong, I wonder whether there was so much focus on whether Donald Trump was too right-wing, and actually the question should have been, is Kamala Harris too left-wing for what is fundamentally a conservative country?
But didn't she get pushed to the left because she had to differentiate herself from Joe Biden?
I think she tried to tack to the centre. I mean, when she was a senator, she was voted, on her voting record, she was the most left-wing liberal politician in that building.
Yeah, I guess also questions around how she, we talk about what an impactful campaign she had. She raised $1 billion, she had tens of thousands of volunteers very quickly. Within 24 hours, records were broken. And yet there were a lot of questions about whether America was getting to know her and whether she was able to help America understand who she was. And then there was this flurry of interviews that she did. But she did spend a lot of time talking about Donald Trump rather than talking about what kind of policies that she would put in place.
Well, her press strategy, I would characterize it as too little, too late. She did not take an advantage of getting out there and really defining who she was and what she was about, defining the 3 pillars of her campaign, which I believe are essential to be successful. And she missed an opportunity. And then, as you said, she waited and did just 1 week of complete and total press coverage. But it wasn't enough for Americans to really intimately know her. And as you said, it was a very short campaign. And people really wanted to know where she stood on key issues that impacted them at the pocket and at the kitchen table.
We're now waiting for Kamala Harris to arrive and give this concession speech. As we were saying earlier, it was supposed to be where the victory party was going to be held, and her supporters late last night were told to go home, that she would address them in the morning. Perhaps they knew that this would be the outcome. Perhaps they didn't. Pennsylvania hadn't been called at that stage, although Fox News jumped the gun and we were still doing our data and tabulation. Let's bring in our Martha Kellner, who is there for us. Martha, you've been talking all night about the mood there, but just give us a sense of how people are feeling there right now.
Yeah, I think incredibly despondent. I think we can now just see Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's running mate, and his wife Gwen have just arrived here. I think they're just out of shot at the moment, but he's greeting supporters of Kamala Harris in the crowd, embracing some of her campaign staff. He's surrounded by Secret Service agents. I imagine very shortly we'll see Kamala Harris. I can also see her niece, Mina, who she's very close to indeed, her sister Maya, making their way into the crowd to watch this concession speech. They were full of hope yesterday, but that evaporated very quickly indeed over the course of just a few hours. You were saying there, did people know when they left last night that this was not going her way? Yes, I think if they really thought about it, I think they knew it was over. People were still saying they had hope. I think we can now hear from Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran, and the way we ran it, Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation. the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations, where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is, I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives. People who had suffered great harm and great pain, and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. HU. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
There you have it, Kamala Harris giving her concession speech. She said, "My heart is full of gratitude and love." And she went on to say, "The light of America's promise will always burn bright." And she said, "I'm proud of the race that we won. It's not the outcome that we wanted. And we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. We accept the results. It's part of the principles of democracy, but the fight for freedom and opportunity and dignity of all people will go on."
Yes, she was saying that, and there we see tears in the crowd, and she addressed that, and she spoke to the young people, she said, who supported the Democratic Party, that it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel disappointed, but the fight goes on. And of course, one of the campaign slogans or mantras, if you like, was "We fight, when we fight, we win." And of course they've lost, and she made the point that actually it's not just about this election, it's about the next election, and it's a long fight. And I wondered how that she was going to sort of get round that, but she said it's a long fight, and that they will fight. I mean, I think the interesting point is that actually,
just looking at Tim Walz,
Tim Walz,
running mate.
Yeah, that actually it's going to have to be a different fight, because they're taking on a very different political opponent. They're taking on a very specific brand of politics, which is Trump's politics, and so it's a different fight, and the Democratic Party are going to have to adapt.
Yeah, she said, "When we fight, we win," but sometimes she was changing the motto, but sometimes the fight takes a little while. She said, I was struck by the emphasis that she put on the fact that she would engage in a peaceful transfer of power. She emphasized that phrase, making the point that Donald Trump did not do that 4 years ago. There was clearly a very sad person there, someone who said she was full of gratitude, love and resolve. It was not what we wanted. It was not what we fought for, not what we voted for. But she said to the young people, and Omarosa was saying, and less young people as well, she said, it's okay to feel sad and disappointed. I thought she used the word fight quite a lot, which actually surprised me. I thought maybe she wouldn't invoke that particular sentiment, because in this country of such division, it has stoked different things. But she used that word a lot, I thought.
Yeah, let's, before we come to Omarosa, let's go to Martha Kellner, who is there at Howard University listening to that speech. And Martha, we're just getting some reflections and thoughts, but just some of your thoughts on what you heard.
Yeah, I thought similarly to Mark, there was that commitment, not just in this speech here, but also in her phone call to Donald Trump earlier, a commitment to a peaceful transfer of power, something which wasn't afforded to her and President Biden by Donald Trump 4 years ago. So I thought that was interesting. I think it was quite an emotional speech. At one point, the crowd burst into spontaneous cheers of "We love you." And at that point, I thought she may have been a little glassy-eyed, and certainly some of her family in the crowd were very emotional indeed. Her stepdaughter, Ella, who's been campaigning in the background for her, doing online videos, she was crying as Kamala Harris was making that speech. The wife of Tim Walz and his daughter, Gwen and Hope, they were both wearing dark sunglasses. It's a cloudy day in DC, so you imagine perhaps they were trying to disguise some of their emotion there. But overall, I thought it was quite an optimistic tone that Kamala Harris was trying to strike there. She mentioned the light of America's promise shining strong, those repeated appeals to keep fighting to protect democracy, to protect reproductive rights as well. She said women of America should have the freedom to make decisions about their own body, and abortion and access to abortion healthcare has been a cornerstone of her campaign. Her team clearly hoped that it would have more of an impact at the ballot box, but I thought interesting that she was still reflecting upon that today. Almost everyone now making their way out of this grassy area in the middle of Howard University. I can see some young girls hugging each other, trying to offer each other some sense of comfort. Certainly, there's a deep contrast here between the celebrations that we see at those Republican watch parties in those Republican strongholds to the scenes here where people feel quite desolate, and I don't think that's overstating the strength of feeling, particularly among young women here and young black women. I was speaking to a woman earlier who's doing the final year of a law course here at Howard University, and she was saying she simply feels like black women are held to higher standards. She said she simply can't bear the thought of a second Trump presidency. So certainly, this country is as divided as ever, and I think that's highlighted by the contrasting emotions we're seeing today.
Yeah, Martha, we can see in some of those images just the tears, the devastation, the raw emotion that people are feeling there as they listen to Kamala Harris give that concession speech. Let's bring in Omarosa, because you, of course, have been with us all night and you listened to that concession speech. Just, I could hear you responding to everything that she was saying on set as we were listening. Just your thoughts.
It was really hard for me to listen to her ultimately concede to Donald Trump. This was, for me, a moment that I thought that we would finally shatter the glass ceiling and overcome sticky floors. But ultimately, the country decided to go into a completely different direction. And that direction was Donald Trump. I listened as she spoke, and she said truth and service, which is the centerpiece of our motto at Howard University, that we would tell truths, and Donald Trump didn't do much of that, and that we would serve our country to the best that we could do. Unfortunately, that was not enough. And there was a commentator that said that black women are held to a different standard. That hit me at the core, because I believe that she was very qualified. She had the experience, and she really did have a good message for this country. And so it was hard to see her concede.
A stinging tweet just come in from Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, well known, of course. He said it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and they want change, and they are right. So says Bernie Sanders. No friend of Donald Trump.
No friend.
No, not at all.
Quite a real challenge now facing the Democratic Party, because as I'm saying, the demographics are shifting. It's a very specific party now, the Trump Republican Party, and the Democrats are going to have to find a way to take that on, aren't they?
They will, and they'll have to do it with someone who is hell-bent on revenge and getting even with the people who were outspoken against his candidacy and against his legacy. So we'll have to see how that fares, because he wants to get revenge.
Yeah, well, let's get more now on what the Democrats can do about all this. Joining us now is Lindy Lee, a Democratic strategist and fundraiser. And Lindy, we've spoken many times in the campaign, and you were very optimistic. And you know Kamala Harris. Have you spoken to her at all in the last 24 hours? Have you seen her? How is she feeling?
I spoke to her before the results became solidified and inevitable. We were originally supposed to be in D.C. through Thursday. That's what the campaign was hinting at. We were honestly anticipating an intense legal battle and a legal fund, because we thought that Trump would declare victory regardless of the outcome, because in his mind, the only acceptable outcome is one in which he wins. So we were very much anticipating that. And clearly, this wasn't the outcome that we wanted. But although I may have come off as optimistic, I think always when I'm out there in public, I did want to give people a realistic assessment of the things. We always needed to retain that Nebraska 2nd congressional district in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That was her path. And we were hoping to at least retain 1 or 2 blue wall states. But the fact that it was a full sweep was just, this is seriously the worst case scenario for all of us.
At what point in the night did you realize it was going horribly wrong for you?
I had felt for weeks that it would not go well, but I wasn't able to say that. I'm not in a position to say that. I'm giving you a very honest take right now, so I hope you guys give me some credit for that. As a surrogate for the campaign, I would be a very terrible surrogate if I went out there and told people that my candidate would lose. So I tried to just say, she still has a path. If she can win Pennsylvania, she could pull it off. And the margin of error in the polls could have gone both ways. Unfortunately, the polls just went considerably in Trump's favor. One thing that did definitely set an alarm off is when Philadelphia's turnout was not significantly enough above the 2020 turnout to basically eat into Trump's election day red wave, because his supporters love voting on election day versus Democrats who like voting early. We needed to build up that buffer before election day, and we needed Philadelphia to truly turn out. And it just wasn't enough. And the collar counties didn't deliver, and that would be Montgomery County, Chester, Bucks. These are the soccer mom areas. These were absolutely fundamental. And I think the campaign made a mistake by assuming that everyone would listen to Liz Cheney, that Republican women would cross over and vote for Kamala Harris. There's no indication that they did.
Was she the right candidate? You're being honest. I mean, you've just told us that you thought for weeks that it wasn't going to happen.
Question,
Lindy, you're not going to be that honest. I mean, I just wonder.
I'm going to answer in the best way that I can, so I'm not committing career suicide. I will just say that if you truly believe that Trump is an existential threat to the American experiment, as I do believe, I know that he launched an insurrection against our Capitol. If you truly believe that, then we should have had a rigorous primary process in order to vet all the candidates, to work out all the kinks, and to ensure the person at the end of the day would be the most formidable candidate against Trump. But we didn't have that process. We frankly had 107 days. President Biden, and this is the truth, he should not have run for re-election. Legislatively speaking, he had a tremendously successful presidency, but he shouldn't have run. We should have had, frankly, the Democratic Party was a victim of its own success when we had the 2020 midterm success. They were predicting a red wave, but what we really got was a pink fart. So we were both.
I love the honesty. I mean,
you talked about there that you knew for weeks. Do you think that the inner circle of Kamala Harris and Kamala Harris herself realized a few weeks ago that perhaps this wasn't going to be good, given she couldn't really close the margins and the polls weren't really moving?
I looked into somebody's eyes, someone really close to her, and I asked her, like, are we going to do this? And she wasn't able to give me a definitive answer. This is someone I know for a very long time, and someone like extremely close to her. And that's when I knew, you know, they weren't sure either. This is the first time I actually vocalized the story. So this is all, I'm just processing this as well with the rest of the world. This is a shell shock. And I really hope, I went on Fox News last night and I laid out a number of issues that I think contributed to this result, including immigration, including cumulative price hikes and the choice of Tim Walz, and also President Biden staying in too long. These 4 factors, I think, led to this outcome. I presented this framework and Democrats were just piling on to me because they just did not want to listen to ways that we can improve. But if you do not acknowledge that America has turned rightward, we're going to keep losing. We have to accept reality. This is where the country is.
Well, this is an important point. So, I mean, the Trump Republican Party has changed. It's much broader in its demographics. What is the Democratic Party going to do to take on Trump? You're going to have to change the way you do things to take him on, surely.
Absolutely. We need a postmortem. We need to truly have a moment of introspection. I just fear that I'm given the pushback that I got last night. My interview has been viewed millions of times, but not for the reason I want, which is I hope that we can change. People are upset that I pushed back on her choice of Tim Walz. I think she should have picked my governor, Josh Shapiro, who had tremendous cross-party appeal. He's famously a moderate, and that would have counterbalanced her image and the image that Trump tried to impose on her as a San Francisco radical. And maybe that wouldn't have won her the campaign, but it certainly would have helped. And in an election of margins, even 1% could make all the difference. And so maybe, you know, somebody like Josh Shapiro might have had broader blue wall appeal as well. So there are a number of things that we could have done differently. And also, she probably should have acknowledged we should have issued those immigration executive orders far earlier in the Biden administration rather than waiting until 2024. I'm a naturalized immigrant. I actually moved from England. My family waited. We applied. We did everything the right way. We didn't jump the line. We didn't storm the southern border. I'm a naturalized immigrant saying that. I'm first generation. So I think the Democrats also made a mistake in assuming that all Latino Americans wanted lax immigration policies. That's not the case. A lot of them think the same way that I do, that everyone should come in through proper channels. We came here the right way, so should everyone else.
Listen, Lindy, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but listen, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being honest, and, well, you've got quite a fight ahead. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm a little surprised
to
hear such candor from someone so close to her. But I want to go back to some procedural things in terms of whether or not Kamala Harris was the right candidate. Procedurally, she was the only candidate that could take over his apparatus and inherit all of the money that he had raised. So there was no choice for them. Yes, I love Governor Newsom. Yes, I love Shapiro as options. But the truth of the matter is they would not have been able to raise enough money in that short amount of time, nor would they have gotten the apparatus of all of the victory centers that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden built together.
So it all comes back to Biden. If he had stepped down earlier, if he had recognized his physical weaknesses, bluntly, earlier, then there would have been time for a proper transition and a primary to choose a candidate that could have beaten Donald Trump.
So the point that emerges from this election is that Donald Trump has not only changed the Republican Party, he's going to change the Democratic Party as well.
Let's hope that
That's a good point.
They're open to change, because we've seen them put up 2 women candidates, and we saw them make the same mistake over and over again in terms of how they opposed Donald Trump. Both of those women went head-to-head with Donald Trump, and both of them lost.
Omarosa, Mark, thank you.
And so what was supposed to be the tightest election in decades is settled in pretty much a day. put this date in your diary, Monday, the 20th of January.
Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States.
This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. Oh, we overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible. Take a look at what happened. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. Take over, Elijah. Take over.
If you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Yeah, look what happened. Is this crazy? This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Conflict. They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.